The Psalms of Ascent. There's 15 Psalms of Ascent in the Psalms, and start at Psalm 120 to 134. Our best scholarly guess, what is a Psalm of Ascent? These are shorter Psalms, and the best guess we have is likely this is what the Israelites might have recited as they went up to the temple, up to Jerusalem for one of the feasts that they were celebrating, and they would be able to recite these short psalms. The psalm that we focused on tonight that became part of what Carmen read, that we were looking at, Psalm 126, there's 6 verses in this psalm. And the way the psalm unfolds, I think, is helpful for how we can share about things tonight. So these 6 verses, if this is for your Bible study tonight before you go to bed. You can go back and read Psalm 126. But the first 3 verses looks back at God's past provision. And so they're thankful to God. I mean, Israel did get into a lot of trouble over its history, but probably they're coming back out of exile. And they're thanking God for taking them out of exile. So the first 3 verses is looking back and being thankful for past provision. And then verse 4 is a present-day prayer. So they've been redeemed from exile, but then in verse 4, they're out of exile, but it ain't all over yet. Everything hasn't arrived, and so they're making a present prayer. And then the last 2 verses, 5 and 6, is expressing hope and assurance for God's future provision and for the prospects and the promise. And so you've got this past, present, and future, and, this is a helpful way maybe for us to structure what we're talking about with Horizon. If you're here tonight, you're tracking with us in some way. You've been around. You've got to know us a little bit. Or you're with somebody who's got to know us a little bit, and so you're there by association. But Horizon started in 1935, and we have some pictures up here. It started in the little knot city of Star City, Saskatchewan, with a pastor, George Houghton. And George Houghton, back in the 1930s, looked around in Saskatchewan and looked at our country, and he said, we need to see leaders trained to work in the kingdom of God. And he had a vision to see that take place, and he said, we're going to build a little school here in Star City, Saskatchewan. And you can see that first picture is the building of the Bethel Bible Institute. And so Horizon College and Seminary started life in the 1930s, 1935, as the Bethel Bible Institute. And quickly it outgrew Star City, Saskatchewan, if you can believe that. And so they relocated to Saskatoon. They relocated just up Idlewild, kind of where the Ramada Inn is. And the Bethel Bible Institute, back when it wasn't called Idlewild, it was called Avenue A. And so that next building there was where it relocated to Avenue A. And it was there until the 60s. And then in 1962, the Lutheran Seminary, the Lutherans decided that they would get together, and 2 different groups of Lutherans, and they built a big building on the campus at the University of Saskatchewan. And so their building became available off of 8th Street. And so the school moved then, and at that time, by then it had become associated with the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada for Saskatchewan and for Manitoba, Northwestern Ontario. And so they relocated into this building on Jackson Avenue, just off 8th Street. And it's one of those locations where forever, from 1962 to 2021, you would explain to people, oh, no, there is a college. It's behind the Sobeys, behind. Well, I never knew that was there. So you would explain your existence for many years in this city. It was prime real estate, but tucked away and hidden behind primary real estate. But there we existed until 2021. And that's the building that I came to. So I've been with Horizon now. I came in 2008. I came with a 3-week-old baby and a wife who's with me tonight. and a 3-year-old son. We moved here, and it was kind of our first big step into ministry of teaching ministry, and this was it. This was life starting for us. So we moved here with this little 3-week-old and started ministry at Jackson Avenue there, and it had just become Horizon College and Seminary a few years before we came, just 2 or 3 years actually. The name had just changed that recently. And from that time in the past, there had been so many things that God had done to that institution. It had moved in many different ways, and it has always been fairly open. It was associated with the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, but it had always been pretty, held that pretty loosely, shall we say. And so even in the 1960s, it started in a relationship with the Lutheran Seminary on campus, and it became a seminary, a degree-granting seminary in partnership with the Lutheran Seminary, which was an odd association, perhaps, but there it was. And so it was doing that from that period on, and it became associated in the 80s. It was the first theological college in Saskatchewan of an evangelical sort to become associated with the University of Saskatchewan. So it gained affiliate status with the U of S and was the first one to do that. And then it made some other changes. And then I started there in 2008, and I had a blissful year where I was an instructor. And then I became going into administration. And I've been in administration ever since. But it has been an adventure. It's been a response of obedience to the Lord, really, to do all that. Because, believe it or not, nobody who knows any better ever aspires to be the president of a theological college. That is not an aspirational goal for anybody setting out. And if they are setting out for that, they're probably the wrong person for that job. But there it was. And so I started serving there, and just coming up to finishing 11 years in that role. And I want to let you know that we are on track. I started in 2008. I started in 2013. I became the president. And we are on track because every 2 years we completely blow up the institution and do something radically different. And we're doing it again. All right, so we're on every 2 years. So 2013-14, I started. In 2015, we launched as the first competency-based education institution in Canada for theological education. Completely changed how we do education. And that settled in for a couple of years. And then, so 2016, we said, you know what, the POC is great, but we really love other people, and they really like what we're doing with competency-based education. So we launched what we called PAOC Plus. POC is fine, but we like them Mennonites. We like those Alliance friends and the Church of God. So we made partnerships with multiple denominations, and we became a multi-denominational institution, which is different from a non- or an interdenominational institution. A multi-denominational institution says we're not just blending everything in generically. We're saying, actually, what we want to do is make space to preserve these distinct traditions and find space for that to happen. And so we became multi-denominational. And then we added a little bit in 2017. This doesn't fit the 2-year paradigm, but it was just a little step. And we launched our first church hub. And the first church hub, interestingly, was a blend of Pentecostal and Mennonite, because I got a phone call in 2017 from a pastor in Winkler, Manitoba, of a evangelical Mennonite church. But this guy was actually formerly a Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada person who had studied from French. He went to the French school in IBQ. Hey, Institut Biblique du Canada. Hey, does that sound impressive? That's it. If I talk like this, it sounds very smart. Yes, okay. So anyway, so IBQ, and he's phoned up, and Tyrone is one of the guys. So Tyrone, give us a wave. So he said, I have a couple of guys in my church in Winkler. They're fantastic. They're leaders, and they have a call of God on their life. And the last thing I want to do is send them to Saskatoon for 4 years, because they're making a difference in our church right now. But I really believe in education, and I want to know, can they do all of their education? I want a legitimate degree. I want a legitimate education, but I'm not sending them away from Winkler. Can you provide that for us? Now, we were already kind of doing online education at the way that Bible colleges do, which is cheap. And so I had my little presidential hat, and I did some calculations, and I said, okay, so you're going to send me 2 students full-time for 4 years, and that costs, carry the 2. And all right, we're going to invest in upscaling our online capability, because Tyrone basically is going to pay for that. So so this church in Manitoba, they're going to guarantee 2 students. We ended up picking up a 3rd student as well for a while from the same church. So that upped our game. We said, okay, we're upping that a level. We're going to make this a better experience, because if it's a lousy experience, it's not going to work. So we upped our game and banked on this, and it was great. So Tyrone, ironically, did a full 4-year degree from Winkler, Manitoba, and he was so good that we hired him. So after he finished his degree, he moved to Saskatoon. That was 2017. All right, but then we got to get up. So 2018, we did a few things. So by 2018, we looked at our programming. We had listened to our constituents, and we said, the future of the church is going to be co-vocational. There's many churches that can afford to hire a whole slew of pastors, but that many is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. A lot more churches are needing to hire people who also have training and skills to do something else. We can't afford to make students do all of their studies at a theological education and then have to go out and do more studies so they can be trained to do something else. We have to find a way to blend it. And so we introduced, and you can see the little poster there, Horizon Plus. So we did Horizon Plus, which is to say, we reached out to places like Saskatchewan Polytechnic and the Edwards School of Business, and we said, you guys have certificates and diplomas. We're going to take your certificate. We want students to be able to take a certificate or a diploma so they get something that they walk away from there. And we're going to blend that with what we do. We're going to really concentrate down what we do in Christian leadership development and worldview formation, theological training. And you can blend these 2 things together, and you graduate with a certificate from, or diploma from the Polytechnic or from the community college, and you get a degree from us. And so that worked. Then, because we keep doing things, we hired Dr. Susan Wendell. And we said, listen, not every leader in the church is 18 to 21 years old. Some of those leaders could be a little bit old. We need to find ways, if we're going to see leaders develop, we need to find ways to get them at all levels. Some people are coming in, they've got degrees. So we need a robust seminary, and we've been embedded with Providence and with the Lutheran Seminary, but we want to grow up and do it on our own. So Susan helped us to get this off the ground and launch a seminary, Horizon Seminary, with ATS affiliated accreditation. So if that means nothing to you, we have accrediting bodies at the undergraduate level. We have that, but now we want it at the seminary level as well. And so that got launched off the ground starting in 2018. We got that started. And then we said, you know what? It's time to move away from Jackson. We didn't actually say that. What we said is, wow, this building is getting really old, and we can't afford to repair it, and so we need to look at some alternatives. And we looked at all kinds of alternatives, and none of them worked, but the Lord opened up a door. I had a conversation with the pastor at Forest Grove. I was lamenting that I could not get any income for our building. We couldn't borrow on our equity, even though the equity was big. And he says, you should come talk to our green space committee. At the end of the day, we end up moving next to Forest Grove. We have a building that was custom built for us, and we dumped a whole lot of money in the tech, so we scaled up. Tyrone didn't pay for that one. But we say we need to be able to have something that's really going to be robust and be able to serve in a broad way. And so we moved over, and so now we've moved to our new facility on Webster Street. And then we lived happily ever after. Thank you for coming. And then it's been 2 years. So it's time for something. So 2 years. So I've learned something in leadership, and I pass this on to all leaders. And if anybody's pastors here, anybody planning to do any type of a building program, I just have learned something. Don't do a building program right before an international pandemic. You can take that to the bank. Really bad timing. But we didn't know that a pandemic was coming. And so what we did, we saw how things were going, and so we're moving. We increased our spending based on reasonable projections, and then we hit a pandemic, and so the spending went up and the income went down. And that lasted until about last summer that we could weather that. And then we said, this is problematic. And so we had to make some hard adjustments, as many businesses have had to do. And so we had to figure out how to scale back our systems and our personnel. And those are always difficult things to do, especially when people are so invested. And so we did that. And we recognized, and I woke up to, I'm like, wow, we're doing everything right. What is the challenge here? And the challenge became apparent to me. We had all kinds of scope, but we lacked scale. I'm so committed to our especially small and rural churches. I love our small and rural churches. I love them. I had a vision driving out on the lonely road in Saskatchewan, and there was like nothing there. And then you go by this little church, and I thought, if this church wasn't here, there is not another witness for hundreds of this is it. This is so, and I just love it. I love these. But the reality is, when you think about training leaders, I go with about a 1% ratio. And I figure about 1% of a congregation will engage in theological education. So if you have a church of 1,000 people, that's 10. Is that right? Yeah, okay, good. Right? Thanks, Derek. Right? We don't have a lot of churches of 1,000 people. So if you got a church of 200 people, if you have churches that are much smaller, so that means that we're getting a potential leader to go forward. We're needing 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 churches to get one. And is difficult because at the same time as that is happening from the college level, in our church level, we desperately need leaders in the kingdom. We desperately need leaders in the kingdom. And we need leaders to lead our churches and to lead our congregations and to disciple people. And so the need is so great. We're seeing the need increase, and we're seeing the pipeline decrease. And that's not just in the church. We know that's happening everywhere, but I only care about the church right now. But we need this. We need these kingdom leaders. And we have the capacity to do it. We got people in Manitoba. We've got people, we got students all the way on the East Coast in BC. We got students coming from us from these different places, but it's kind of hodgepodge. We have the capacity. We have the scalability to do this, but we don't have all the scale. So we are looking for partners. We're saying we need to scale up. We need to take our product and we need to find a way to get this out to a bigger network. And so we were shopping for partners. And we actually, you would think this would be easy with theological colleges that struggle, but we actually reached out to a couple different schools. And one that you might even know of may have rather perished than actually partner. And another school, more recently we reached out to, decided to move into the basement of a church rather than partner. And you think, I don't know, like, why? I don't get it. But that's what happened. And then we had a conversation that started back in this summer, in May. And there was a school out in Ontario, and they were close to perishing. And we said, you know what? We feel like we have something that we can scale through you and reach your constituency. And their constituency is massive. It's massive. But their model wasn't able to serve it. Their model was very much a bricks and mortar, attractional model. You have to come to us in order to make it work. And we said, we think we can help work through you. And that very, very, very quickly turned into a whole new way that we're operating. So we made an announcement in November that we have made a strategic partnership with a school in Ontario, Master's College and Seminary. And things have moved much, much, much quicker than anticipated, but they had to. They had to, or the institutions wouldn't be able to make it. And what that means is, so that's our present. So we looked at our past. We're looking at our present. Our present right now is a strategic partnership. But what does that mean then for our future? I'm sticking with my Psalm category. What it means for the future is between our school and that school, we have a network currently of 800 churches. 800 churches in Canada. And what we've been doing, we've already been doing this on the prairies in our small scale, is working with churches like Tyrone's that create hubs where students can learn but stay embedded and serve in their local context. But now we're able to do that on a whole nother level, a whole nother scale. That's 800 churches. Now that school is a PAOC church, but I have more friends than that. And I'm talking to my more friends than that at national levels. So with our 3 denominational partners outside the PAOC, just imagine this with me in your brains for a moment. If those 3, if we come on with them at a national level, that is a network of over 1,700 churches in Canada. Now, if we have 1,700 churches, let's say that 10% of those churches say we're going to buy into that. Help me out, Derek. I don't want to do these math things. Okay, so I'm doing 10% and 1%. How hard can that be, right? So you have 170 churches. Here's the math part going to come in. Okay, 170. Let's say we average 2 students per church. Some are going to have 1, some will have 3, some will have 10. 2 students per church times 170 churches, right? 340. These are 340, not students that are going away, I'm going to go spend a year or 2 at Bible school and get on with my life. These are going to be 340 students. These are going to be 340 leaders who are actively engaged in the active leadership every year. That's with 10%. 340. So we're already doing this. I just had a conversation with one of our little church hubs out in Lac de Bonnie, Manitoba, James Schwab. He's got a student there, Sarah, and he's taught, I said, James, who's coming up after Sarah? So Sarah's in her first year. Sarah had this wonderful rural opportunity where they had a plan for church on Sunday, and the plan was to show a video of a sermon. And a bird, it only happens in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, a bird flew into the transistor and knocked out all the power for the church right before the service. And James is panicking. And Sarah says, hey, Pastor, do you want me to just share what I shared with the youth on Friday night? So Sarah gets up, first year, like, okay, like, she's a first year student, so let's assume it's a first year level sermon. But she preaches to her church, and how do you think they received that? How do you think they encouraged her? So imagine Sarah in 3 more years. When Sarah graduates, Sarah's going to graduate not just with an education and a degree. She's going to graduate with 4 years of experience under her belt. And I hope she doesn't stay with James, because I hope that she says, I'm ready, Pastor. I want to go to a service over here. And that's why I'm telling James, who's in your junior youth right now, you're going to prepare to replace Sarah, because he's going to want to send her out. Now times that by 340. We have an opportunity to make a seismic impact. We've been talking about the need to prepare leaders in this country. We actually have a really, really, really reasonable means of doing it. We are on the crest of something truly, truly groundbreaking, and this is my carnal pride. It's coming out of the prairies of Saskatchewan. It's incredible. God has given us a gift. We have an opportunity to actually move the needle. We have an opportunity actually to see godly leaders emerging. And that's why we've invited you here tonight, to share that vision so you can catch that vision and so you can support that vision. Because it's worth supporting. The impact that we can make is incalculable. And I haven't even got my head around the scale of this thing. I'm back and forth right now to Ontario, going to this. So since we launched this, since we announced this in November, we have now had 50 churches that are making inquiries about doing this, and we'll probably launch 25 to 30 this September. If you're in the business world, your innovators is about 2.5%, and your early adopters is 10 to 13%. We haven't even tapped the innovators yet. This is massive. The potential here is massive. And so I'm excited about this. And this might last more than 2 years. But you never know. But I want to invite you then here tonight, and this is the part where we say this is your opportunity. And if you're here, you probably go to lots of fundraisers, and everybody maybe says the same thing, but this is where you can really make a difference. Your investment into making this happen has ramifications that will be felt long after all of us are gone. And so I want to invite you, and this is that part of the program, and there's more dessert after this part, but invite you to take advantage of this opportunity. And I believe it is an opportunity. I know we ask for money, and lots of places do, but this is an opportunity to make an impact unlike anything I can think of, because each leader that you support, 340 leaders, each one has the potential to impact an incalculable number of people. There's no computer to work out the possible impact that this can make. So I'll make this is the part that of the program where I invite you to take advantage of this opportunity, and we will make it, just like we try to make our education as accessible to as many students as possible. I'm going to make receiving your money as accessible as possible. E-transfer business at horizon.edu. We have PayPal. You can go online. Alana is at the back, and she has credit debit machine, and she can also set you up for monthly donations. You don't have to do it all at once. It can happen all year long. So I just want to invite you to do that. We're going to take a few minutes so that you have an opportunity to do what you feel the Lord tells you to do. And I don't want to be a person that puts any pressure on you to do that. But I do see it as a tremendous opportunity, and I leave that for you. So